This is a TalkStation original podcast.
On this episode of The Senior Moment, Mary Lou Infinito is back with us to talk about end-of-life care and her role as a death doula. We talk about the importance of preparation and documentation leading up to the end of life. All that and more this week on The Senior Moment. Welcome back to The Senior Moment with Ryan and Lynn from Carteret Landing, and we are pleased to have Mary Lou back for another episode with us. This time we're going to be taking advantage of some of her history and background, being a nurse by trade, and then also a certified death doula, which is very intriguing to me. What does that mean?
So most people are more commonly aware of a birthing doula. A birthing doula helps a woman who's pregnant make a plan for what she hopes the birthing process will look like when she has a baby. A death doula helps someone specifically that's been given either a long-term chronic illness diagnosis or a terminal diagnosis start to think about what would the plan be for what they hope the end of their life will look like. Where do they want to be? Who do they hope will be there? What things do they need to take care of before they actually come to the point of passing away? So it's a plan. It doesn't always get rolled out the way people actually hope for, but at least they have started thinking about some of those things.
Now, Mary Lou, are you telling me that at some point I'm going to die?
Well, Ryan, newsflash, yes, I can share that with you because nobody gets out of here alive. Everyone will die at some point. Although the work I do, we talk to everyone over the age of 18. So let me start there. Ryan, are you over 18?
I am over 18.
Okay. Lynn, are you over 18?
A little bit.
Got that covered. Okay. So the reason we talk to people over the age of 18 is that we're on college campuses doing work for ECU Health everywhere in the 29 counties that we cover. And we are, in fact, helping people have an advanced directive. And often people associate, I don't need that. I'm not old enough. I'm not sick enough. I'm not close enough to dying. But what if you step out in the hallway and trip on something or go out on the road and get hit by a bus? Or, this could probably never actually happen, but what if we ever lived through a pandemic? People sometimes got sick very quickly, right? When we lived through that and it caught a lot of people off guard.
It certainly did.
It did. It absolutely did. But people can get very, very ill. Doesn't make it permanent, but during the time that someone's very ill or at the end of their life when they're unable to make decisions, they should be able to already have someone who is their advocate to be their voice in place, which requires appropriate documentation executed the way it should be in the state of North Carolina to make that happen.
When you say appropriate documentation, I always hear, do you have a will and do you have a living will? Are those the documents you're talking about, or what else is there out there that we should be preparing or guide us through this process?
Okay, so those are great questions, Ryan, really great questions. So first, let me say, think of this as a house divided. So if there's a firewall in the house, one side of the house is your will. And your will is who's getting grandma's pie plate and who's getting your mother's pearls. The things, the money, the assets, those are equally important of everything that I'm going to talk about, but that's not my wheelhouse. I am not a lawyer, but that's where people want to have a lawyer, want to make sure they have gotten the appropriate legal advice and do those documents appropriately.
Sounds like we'll save that for another show.
That absolutely is a great show to advise people because it can cause grave family upheaval to not have those things done the way you want them to be. But in my wheelhouse, what I deal with is the category of advanced directives, of which there are multiple types of advanced directives. A living will is one. A healthcare power of attorney, also called a healthcare agent, naming that person, that's a second one. There are two doctor's orders forms. One is called a DNR, also known as a do not resuscitate, when someone is very close to the end of their life and does not want to be resuscitated. They want to be allowed to have a natural, peaceful death when that happens. And the other one is called a MOST form, and MOST stands for Medical Orders of Scope of Treatment. Those are often used in assisted living, senior living, skilled nursing facilities, but they're also used for people in their homes. And that's a conversation with your doctor. Those two forms are not something you decide and do on your own, Those are important conversations that you should ask your doctor about if you have any serious illness or you are a caregiver for someone with a long-term serious illness or a caregiver with a terminal illness, someone who's on hospice care. All of those people should be thinking about having those medical doctor's orders in place.
What are some of the things, I always like to have at least a little prep when I go to see my doctor. So if I brought this up with my doctor, what are some of the questions that they're going to be asking me? What are some of the things that they want to know?
Well, if you were asking those questions about a do not resuscitate or a most form, I hope your doctor would say, you personally have no need for that because I'm hoping that you're still as young and healthy as you're looking right here in front of
Thank
me.
you.
But if you were caring for someone who was, and it doesn't have to be elderly, we've all known lots of people who've gotten a serious diagnosis and a terminal diagnosis at a very young age. So it's not about age, it's about health and wellness. So when someone has that conversation, it's about because they could have had 7 heart attacks already, and they know that their heart is compromised. They have congestive heart failure. They only have a limited capacity for their heart to work. Or I know you had spoken in the past when I was here about your dad having COPD, right? You saw him decline in terms of his lung capacity over the years. Those are illnesses that people are going to live less time because the illness. So those conversations should be with the doctor to say, when I get close to being to the end, I would like you to know this is how I want that to fall out. Because unless you mention it and tell them that you want it, it's not always the beginning of the conversation for a doctor. They're always looking for how they can help you live longer, and they do a great job at that.
They do. We are a society that definitely has made that a priority, and I think that this is a great conversation to have because, again, at some point we're all going to die, and dying with dignity and dying with grace is a very important thing to be able to make sure we're able to do.
It is, Ryan. And we are actually what I like to term as I don't like it, but it's a reality, a death-denying society. Mm-hmm. People want to go to the doctor and find out what new medicine, what new procedure, what else, how can we do this? And often people are thinking, really, because your grandmother is 112 years old and she's had 9 heart attacks, I'm really not sure that there's more we can do. And doctors will tell you all the time, sometimes families will say, oh, but there must be something. And patients will say, oh, but I'm so tired. It's okay. I'm ready to be done. And families don't always want to hear that from their loved one. Oh, Grandma, you have to do more. Mm-hmm. You can't give up. I'm sure you see that in the building all the time. Yep.
Absolutely.
And it can be a struggle between a family. So the best time to have conversations is when someone is well and they help the family understand what their goal for what they want the end of their life to look like. What do they value the most? What is most important to them? Those are the things people should be sharing with their family so that their family can be on task to be their advocate for what their goal is.
So in North Carolina, you're talking about the family in general. Who is the person that makes the decisions for me, or
Again,
when I become unable to make the decision, who does it, and how do I choose who gets to do it?
Well, those are 2 different questions because, yes, there's a hierarchy in the state of North Carolina, and let me first address how you get to choose. That is how you use the healthcare power of attorney agent forms to be able to have a conversation with somebody. We believe that advanced care planning is not a one-time thought, oh, let me just have Lynn be my person and fill out a piece of paper and say that. It's about having a conversation. So the conversation starts with you thinking about it. What do you want? What are your goals? And then step 2 is talking with your family, talking to the person that you want, making sure that they could honor your wishes. Not that they will decide what they want for you, but that they will honor your wishes. And when they say yes, and you're both on the same page, then step 3, creating the document. Then after the document is created, step 4 is sharing that document. A lot of times when I do classes, I say to people, have you ever done this? And they say, oh, yes, absolutely. It's in my safe deposit box, or it's in my lawyer's office. It's locked in a safe at my house. None of those are all that helpful because at 3 o'clock in the morning, no one can get to those documents. Those documents should be on file at your doctor's office, at the hospital. We put them on file at ECU Health so that we are the regional trauma center. If someone gets airlifted to Greenville and they end up in the trauma center, we can give them the care they want should match the care they get. That's really the best definition of best practice. But we can't do that unless people have done their part and put their wishes appropriately documented. Then after they share it, they should go back and review it. You could choose someone who predeceases you. You could choose someone who gets a diagnosis of a terminal disease, and they shouldn't need this pressure to be your person when they're struggling with their own illness, or someone who gets a dementia diagnosis. They really shouldn't be your person because they can't manage the intake of information about what's happening. So selecting the person once doesn't mean it's done. It's not a one and done. It means that you in fact have to look at that on an ongoing basis. When there's been a death in the family, reassess. Is that person still, who needs to come now? When there's been a new diagnosis, when there's been a decline in your health or someone else's health, someone may move away. There's a lot of reasons why you can change it. So the document is not in cement. Once you do it, you can redo it. And we can talk about, if you'd like, how to actually do that document and what does that mean. That's a really good way to make sure people understand the process, and also talk about the hierarchy.
Why don't we take a break and then come back and we'll talk about the document and everything that you were just saying.
Hi, this is Lynn Schultz at Carteret Landing. We invite you to visit our beautiful assisted living community. Carteret Landing pairs exceptional, compassionate senior care with the stylings of a resort. Our beautifully appointed suites, common areas, and bright and engaging memory care neighborhood can provide you or your loved one with the quality living they deserve. Carteret Landing is in Morehead City, right behind the Friendly Market. Come by and see us today, or call for your personal tour at 252-773-0980.
Hi, this is January Brown with Eastern Carolina Council, Area Agency on Aging, and you're listening to Senior Moment.
Welcome back. We are still on the subject with Ryan Kelly and with Mary Lou of the importance of documentation.
So we talked a little bit about the important documents that your doctor can help you with, and then there are important documents that really require family conversation. The 5 steps, how to get there. But what the documents are is a living will has very specific conditions, and people need to sit and review that and what they do and don't want as far as extraordinary care during those specific events. But a healthcare agent and a healthcare power of attorney is the person you decide, after you know what's most important to you and what you value and how you want things to follow through, the person who can honor those and be your voice. So the word I really like to use is you want to have someone who is your advocate, because you would be unresponsive. If you were able to communicate, the paperwork and the documents don't even come into play. It's really about when you are unable to communicate. So when you're unable to communicate, this person who's your advocate and the person who would be their backup if they were unavailable, like in the case of a husband and wife, you may have selected your spouse, but if you were in a car accident together and you're both unresponsive, there has to be a backup person. So you don't want to always just have one person. You want to have at least 2. That's the goal. And that person will be your voice. They should honor your wishes, do the things that you said you would want done in the event that you're unable to speak for yourself. That's who the doctors will talk to. That's who they'll communicate with. That paperwork has to be on file every place where you seek medical care. So we're here in Carteret County, at Carteret Health, in Craven County, at Carolina East, but also for all this area, ECU Health in Greenville is your regional trauma center. So you see that on the news all the time, right? There's a car accident, people get airlifted to Greenville, and so they want to have it on file there also. It's not instead of, it's in addition to. And then the important thing for people to know is when you change your paperwork because the person who you selected dies or isn't well, you have to update that document everywhere you've put the document. So I encourage people to keep a list of where they've put it so they can easily go back and check off that they've updated the form. The term for these forms is that they stack by date. So if you did a form last year and you made a new form this year with a new person, last year's form is void once you've executed this document appropriately. And that, in the state of North Carolina, we are the only state that requires you to have a notary and 2 witnesses. There's lots of people considering that may be a lot and a burden, but currently that's the law, and so that's how it has to be done, and then put on file after those things are done. So the events that we do through ECU Health is we go to senior centers, we go to churches, we go places to be able to talk to people about having this conversation. As you said, Ryan, it can be a difficult conversation to start, but how to have the words to start a conversation with a family. Pastors are very helpful to us in terms of encouraging people to get this done before they're ill, so that they too know what people want and how to manage things. We go to book clubs, we go to wine clubs, we go any kind of group to be able to talk to people, but we also go exactly to Carteret Landing and places to be able to talk to people in groups with their families and whatever. Understanding 2 parts of that: how to select your healthcare agent and how to be a healthcare agent. What does that mean? So if you wanted me to be your agent and I wanted to keep you alive for forever, no matter what, but that's not what you wanted, I shouldn't be your agent. You shouldn't pick me if I'm not going to honor your wishes. I'm sure that makes sense.
I would think that brings it back to the importance of having it in a written document, because emotion's going to come into play.
Absolutely.
And even if you knew your spouse's wishes and you believed in those wishes, and an emotional state is going to change everything.
In that moment. That's right.
Absolutely.
Because in that moment, we don't want to let go of our loved one.
Right.
Especially, it's even harder when it's a child, an adult child. We don't want to let go of a child. We don't, we want to be able to do everything we can to save them. And that certainly would be correct. We would do everything in a trauma situation to save them, but that doesn't mean it's going to work.
Right.
And so there has to be a point where we understand what does that mean. End of life will come at some point.
So Mary Lou, how does it work if I have my advance directives and then I have my healthcare agent? Which one takes precedence at the hospital? If I have my information on file at the hospital and then my healthcare agent comes and says, no, we're not going to do that, who do they listen to, or how?
That's another great question. You got a lot of great questions, Ryan. Wow. So in the document itself, when you name the person who's your healthcare, the document is called your advance directive. It's a type of advance directive, having your healthcare agent named. A type of advance directive is your living will, the most form, the DNR. They're all categories. The categories advance directives, and each of them is a type of document. You will select, there's a space where you say, honor my document or honor my healthcare agent. So you will have the opportunity to select, and that is there so that you can be sure you feel 100% comfortable that it's going to be the way you want it to be, that you know that person's going to agree, or you just are not sure. As you're saying, Lynn, in the heat of the moment of an emotion, is somebody going to break? I will absolutely tell you, and I say it every time I teach my classes, the person in your family now, I know we're in Carteret County, North Carolina at this moment, but there may not be anybody this is true, but I've met people across my years of teaching that some people have a drama queen in their family. You probably don't know anybody that has one of those, but that's not your best choice. I'm just saying it out loud. I'm being totally honest. That's not your best choice for your healthcare agent, the person that's going to somewhat freak out. Other than that person, it's all about who you pick. And that person, you will decide if you want the document to take precedence or the person being able to answer the questions. Because really, if they can manage the information, you can't know every detail of what the possibilities of how something bad is going to happen. So the nuances of every situation have to sometimes be considered. Putting what we call a time trial. Try everything for 2 or 3 days. Try everything for a week. And if I'm not getting better, allow the natural dying process to happen. Those are reasonable things to put in your document, and reasonable things for your healthcare agent to have heard you say. Because in the heat of the moment, in that emergency, they can hear you in their mind saying, do this and then do that. And that can make life very, very easier for them. It's not easy. It's not an easy task. It's not something people should sign up for not knowing what the person wants.
That's a really good point that you made me think about, is that a lot of times we'd say, all right, this is who I would want to have raise my children, and this is who I want to have as my healthcare agent. But to have that actual conversation with the person that you think you want as your healthcare agent and say, these are the things that I want to happen, are you comfortable doing that? because you were saying if a person has different goals than what your goals are, they're probably not the right person to choose as your agent.
Right. And the other thing that happens, and I've been in this situation, where you pick up the phone and you call someone in a crisis situation and say, we're here at the emergency room with Mrs. Smith, and she named you as her healthcare agent, and oh, you didn't know that? She never talked to you about that? You don't know what she wants, and you're not coming to the emergency room? Click. So it's not fair to a person to put their name on a legal document piece of paper and have it notarized and witnessed, and then there's this responsibility that people don't want because they don't even know what you want. That is not a fair burden to put on a person. There needs to be conversation where people really get on the same page and find out that this person is a good person to be your agent or not a good person to be your agent. If there's first of all, there doesn't have to be a document if there's been enough conversation and families are on the same page and they're all good, because there is a hierarchy in the state of North Carolina. So it starts with the person who's the appointed legal guardian or the appointed lawyer for the client. And so if that's the truth, then that is in place for a person, that's the person who will be their healthcare agent. If those people don't exist, then it will be the person named as the healthcare agent. If there's not a document in place and there's not a healthcare agent, it will default to the spouse. And if there's not a spouse, it will go to the adult children and the parents of that person. And if there's not parents still living or any adult children, it will go to the siblings of the patient. And if there are no siblings, it will go, the last step is to the person with a significant relationship, which doesn't have to be an intimate relationship. It can be their best friend, it can be their roommate, it can be whatever it is of a significant relationship, but that's the very last step. So if someone has a relationship with someone that they want to be the first choice, they shouldn't leave that to be the random last opportunity based on the hierarchy. If they did the document, they could name whoever that person is as the actual healthcare agent. And that can be very helpful.
So as I'm laying unconscious in the ER and the hospital doesn't have any of this information, what are they doing during that time period that somebody's trying to figure out?
They're actively treating you. They're not waiting to find the person. They're doing everything they can. And the secondary step is finding the person. The first step is whether it's a trauma or a heart attack or whatever it is, they're going to be actively treating you in every emergency room that there is to be able to make sure that you're getting the best care possible till they find out something different.
So it sounds like it's really important to be taking these steps.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking is you're in a trauma situation and the hospital is having to search down all this.
First, they're taking care of you.
Right. But still, to have it prepared, just be prepared.
Being prepared can make all the difference. We know that whether it's a hurricane or anything, whatever, this is the same thing. Having the medical information in place to be able to know, and having conversations. Yes. We are a death-denying society, and we can change how our lives end if we have better conversations and talk about things. And there's plenty to talk about. Love to go anywhere where people want to gather some folks and have more conversation at your facility, in your conference room, or any place else.
We need to do that.
I appreciate you having us here today.
So as a wrap-up,
yes?
Next 2 steps for anybody listening.
Think about it, talk to your family, and decide what you want, and figure out that you could get in touch with Lynn and Ryan. They can put you in touch with me. We can have some informational sessions and be able to help people get this paperwork at one of the senior centers or your church or wherever you'd like to gather folks. Thank
Wonderful.
you so much.
Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for sharing the information.
My pleasure.
Hi, I'm JJ Smith.
And I'm Zach Nally.
And we're Carteret County News-Times reporters and host of the new podcast, Paperboys.
Join us each week as we bring you exclusives with coaches and athletes, tournament organizers, and newsmakers in the world of sports.
We'll cover high school football, basketball, and so much more, as well as catch up with former star athletes from our county and beyond.
Listen every week to the Paperboys podcast, streaming now on Spotify, YouTube, and at CarolinaCoastOnline.com. New episodes every Friday.